Hi, my name is Bruce Bolger, and I'm founder of the Enterprise Engagement Alliance. Pleased to present Class 6, our case studies on the implementation of a strategic and systematic approach to people management. We're kicking off this 1-hour session with about a 15 to 20-minute case study with Rick Beers, officially Richard, and he's Senior Director of Sales Training for Sunovion Pharmaceuticals. And they're a leader in treatments for central nervous system conditions. And this seminar or webinar is part of the formal training program of Stakeholder Management by the Enterprise Engagement Alliance. We're the only program in the world that provides a formal and strategic approach to training of stakeholders across the enterprise. And we give great thanks to the solution provider partners. And then we provide lots of free education, folks. Information about the field at the EEA and enterpriseengagement.org. All of this information is free. We're here to help. So I'm very pleased to introduce today Rick Beers, officially, as I said, Richard, and he's a sales director, I said, at Sunovion Pharmaceutical. And the reason we asked Rick to appear on this program today is that they are a great example of a company that applies a strategic and systematic approach to engaging their people. And while he is head of sales training and has a very holistic approach that he's going to share with you in a minute, he's also very connected to the other ways that the organization engages their salespeople. And as you can imagine, in the pharmaceutical world, that is quite a challenge because these are high-paid, successful salespeople, and the best can work anywhere. So thank you very much, Rick, for joining us today.
Glad to be here, Bruce.
And my first question to you is, how would you describe what is the overall purpose and values or culture of Sunovion that's embedded into your sales culture?
At Sunovion, we have values, and really we put patients at the center of everything we do. Now, I'm not saying that that's unique to our pharmaceutical company. You'll hear that or something similar to that for a lot of them. But I think the difference at Sunovion is we really live that every day, and we work that into every aspect of the organization.
And in terms of your sales, so your strategy of sales training, as I said, I was very, impressed with the fact of how strategic it is. Could you kind of explain the company's overall philosophy, starting with recruitment? You don't just recruit anybody, and then kind of take us through the journey of your sales development process.
Sure. We like to treat employees coming in as volunteers. We consider this a volunteer environment. There's a lot of pharmaceutical companies out there, and we're all in competition for the best people. So for us, we want to make sure that when people arrive, both with an HR onboarding and sales training, that day one is a confirmation that they made the right choice in coming here. Part of that is really about recruiting, attracting, and bringing in and then retaining the right people. So we employ an outside vendor to do screening for us, and we want through them to attract the best candidates, but also the candidates that will fit in with our culture. So that's built into the recruitment mechanism that we use. So they are screening for people that align with our particular organizational values. So when we get that pool of candidates, we then have our sales leaders screen those candidates, do interviews, et cetera. But the way they do it is a little bit unique as well. We have what's called a competency-based selection tool. And that selection tool really generates an interview guide. And there are 3 areas of that interview guide. The first one is organizational capabilities. So we want to check for strategic thinking or driving for results. Those are organizational capabilities. We also look at functional skills in there, their ability to sell, product knowledge, clinical acumen, et cetera. But the third piece of that really gets to organizational values. There's a series of questions that will identify, do these people really align with the Sunovion organizational values? And we look at those 3 areas together to bring on the best people that we can. And traditionally, we have been bringing in people who have 10, 15, sometimes 20 years of successful pharmaceutical sales experience in the CNS area. And as our product mix is changing, we're actually looking right now to bring in a more diverse sales force. And we're looking to people with less experience right now, but still the drive that we're looking for and some of the potential for success. So we want to broaden the group that we're bringing in and still have the same success.
And what are some of the sales tactics that you use to and how do you align them toward your goals? Getting tactical here.
Tactically speaking, we have a selling model that we've built here at Sunovion that's specifically for us. So we've consulted with a couple of different vendors and we've developed something that really is unique to us. And we say that we've got a disruptive selling approach, which really is about gaining the HCP or healthcare provider's attention so that we can really give them the right information that they will listen to, retain, and then act on. But the underpinning of all of that is it's all in service to our patients. Keeping patients at the center of everything we do is always in the conversation.
So in a sense, you say disruptive. Is there a little bit of the sales challenge approach in your work? In other words, don't be afraid to inform the physician what's in his or her own best interests. Where does that fit in?
Yeah, absolutely. We look at it as we compete for the time and attention of very busy healthcare providers. They're busier today than they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And there are other pharmaceutical companies with pharmaceutical sales representatives trying to get in the door and get that doctor's attention or their mind space. So for us, we want to disrupt the moment and gain the doctor's full attention. And when we are disruptive, and I'll make the point, not disrespectful, but just something to grab their attention, to get their full attention, only then can we give them information that may change their thinking. And disruption can be as simple as, doctor, I'm going to ask you to look at something from a different perspective today. Would that be okay? That's a little different from what the average sales representative might say. The doctor says yes, now we've got their attention. And then we present them the clinical information that could help them make a decision for the appropriate patient. If they agree, we ask them for a commitment to prescribe our medication for the appropriate patient. Of course, giving fair balance and important safety information as well. And with that, we truly are thinking of the patients in everything that we do.
Now, this really requires a high level of consultative selling, doesn't it? You have to have a lot of confidence to be able to say that to a physician in a busy practice. You'd better have information that looks at it from a different perspective. It's credible. How do you do that?
Yeah, we bring in, as I mentioned, people with a lot of experience, but now as we are bringing in or looking to bring in people with less experience, but a lot of potential, we have to make sure that our training is rock solid. So we've got e-learning exercises and modules that our new reps go through to make sure that they are clinically sound, they understand the anatomy, the physiology, our product knowledge, our competitive products, and the selling skills that go along with them. We align our new sales representatives with our training managers and a group of 35 field-based trainers that we have right now. We tap into them for some real field experience. Our new hires do field rides with their new peers out in the field. And then along the way, we do a couple of different certifications. So they will take our selling material, clinical reprints, and have to do selling presentations back to sales training to be certified that they not only know the information, but they can deliver it in a compelling way and deliver important safety information in the fair balance that we need to.
So the format of the selling, it sounds like you have selling and training. You have obviously training for clinical knowledge. Then you have training for actual selling skills, I would imagine, and
Yep.
selling. So what are the mediums for those? Is it face to face?
Sure.
Do you have a digital app? Is it group training? What are the media for those training?
Yeah, I'll say all of the above. We do an onboarding live class for the personal touch to make introductions and align faces with names for our new hires to make them comfortable. And as I said before, we want them on day one to have the affirmation that they joined the right company. They've got all the support that they need, and then we align them to their curriculum. And that really starts with a lot of home study e-learning modules. But we do have regular check-ins with our field-based trainers, and we also align our sales managers to check in with their reps on a weekly basis as well. So the beginning part, and it could be anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks, is around acquiring knowledge. It's all of the e-learning modules and then learning from their mentors and field-based trainers. We then move into a phase that's more application-based. We bring them in for 1 to 2 weeks of training at headquarters. That's live training in the classroom, and that's the application portion. And really, we want them to have practice doing role plays, practice selling presentations, so that we can see and confirm that they can deliver sales presentations in that compelling way with the appropriate fair balance.
Great. And then in terms of measurement, how do you, well, before I get to measurement, it appears from what you've told me that while your focus is on training, you have a real stake in performance improvement. Apparently, part of your pay is based on the effectiveness of sales training. Could you explain that?
Yeah, we all share in headquarters. We all share in the company performance. And if you're on the commercial side, like sales training is, we also share in the sales results as well. So if you look at the sum total of all of our products and did they achieve their objectives, that's a good portion of the year-end bonus that we would earn in sales training. And the other part would be achieving the corporate objectives, which go beyond just the inline brands. It would be commercializing products or building training or things like that for anything in the future, any major company initiatives that are going on.
And one of the other reasons I reached out to you for this case study, Rick, today was because you guys seem to be careful about interconnecting. You're taking a holistic approach to how you engage your salespeople, because even though you're in training, you've told me that your company has a comprehensive approach. Could you tell me sort of that holistic, you mentioned that the company has other incentive recognition or other efforts that you align with so that there's more impact. Could you just quickly lay out what those are?
Sure. So in the past, we did traditional year-end reviews and mid-year reviews, where I'm sure people who are listening in are familiar with a mid-year review or year-end review, where you get a meets expectations, maybe an exceeds expectations, sometimes partially meets. This year, for the first time, we got rid of all of that. There are no ratings in this company right now. And what we have is 3 periods where it's called conversation connection, where I get a chance to sit down with each individual member of my team, as every other leader does in the company. And it's a check-in that incorporates how are you achieving what are you doing to achieve your objectives? And then how are you doing it? So the what is, what are you accomplishing? The how is, are you doing it aligned with our organizational values? And that's a part of each one of these conversations. And at the year-end conversation, there's a broader conversation that also says, how do you need to grow and develop over the next year to achieve next year's goals, and what support do you need? So it's very much tied to the organizational values. While that's going on 3 times a year, on a more regular basis, we have other rewards and recognition programs that are also aligned to our organizational values. Many companies have a system of rewards that you get points that can be converted into online purchases or travel. In our company, you can even use these points for charitable donations. So it's fun to earn the points if you do something good or outstanding or that somebody notices. But all of those points are also aligned to the organizational values. So if I were to give some points, let's say I'm going to give 100 points to somebody on my team, I'll pick the organizational value and I'll say, our 4th value is align, and that's collaborating and winning as one team. So if somebody on my team aligned or got together with some other people to accomplish a goal, maybe people from other departments, then they would be rewarded for the how they got it done, not just that the project was completed.
That's really good. Go ahead.
I should also mention that when we talk about engagement throughout the year, there's a number of other vehicles to measure that engagement. And in the field, there are, of course, field rides where managers would ride around with their sales representatives and give them feedback. But we also have town hall style meetings where we get feedback from the field, and we do those for headquarters as well. And then there's also something called skip one meetings, where a senior leader will go 2 layers down to have a conversation with a sales representative. So an area sales director would meet with a sales representative as a check-in to find out how they're doing. And it's also a check-in on the leadership. How is their manager doing in meeting their needs? And we all participate in them. So I have those meetings, and my boss's boss meets with me on a regular basis to do those check-ins. We also, on an organizational level, we call it a culture amp survey, and this happens a couple of times a year, where it really is a check-in on the culture and how are we doing versus our organizational values. So these are not specific one-time things that we do, but it's an ongoing process through multiple different measures that we're keeping an eye on it.
Now, a lot of companies do things like these culture amp, and that's actually a specific company, but it's also a service, I guess. These types of surveys, and then don't do anything with them. It sounds to me like, you've changed your performance appraisal process pretty significantly. Is that coming out of a continuous improvement process, if you will?
I can't say specifically that it's a result one of the other, but I would say they're very much related, because that culture amp survey is driven by HR, and HR has been making changes over the last 3 years in this direction, for sure.
So measurement, how do you, unfortunately, we weren't able to have Todd Hansen from Catalyst Performance Group today, but he is scheduled to appear on an upcoming program on measurement. So we'll hear his wisdom there, because he is one of the world's, one can say he's one of the world's leaders in ROI of engagement and human capital processes, only because he's a big fish in a small pond. It's still a new area. So could you tell us, Rick, what are some of the measures that you look at of effectiveness, not just in terms of engagement, but more, quantitative and qualitative measures to demonstrate effectiveness?
Well, for us, and you mentioned Todd, and we work very closely with Todd and his team, and we measure for sales training every sales training class that we do. And we look at reaction, we look at satisfaction, and we also look at a version of, can they demonstrate that they are able to apply what they have learned. So we look at probably 3 levels of measurement for our new hire sales representatives. We also do that, and Todd and company work with us for our national sales meetings, area meetings. We measure those as well. And then coming out of those meetings, we sit down with Todd and we go over the results and get some great insight from their perspective as well as ours, and try to figure out what can we change. And so we run our new hire training classes 5 times a year in headquarters. We have this debrief meeting for each of our brands 5 times a year, and we make changes every single time. This has been going on for years. There's never a class that goes by that we don't find something that can be improved upon.
Well, we just are lucky here that I've got Todd, I believe, if I can get him in here. I'm going to invite him in to join us for the conclusion of this program. Todd, I'm trying to get you on camera.
I can see Todd here.
Okay, I cannot, but I'll trust you. Yep, there he is.
Yep.
Okay. Nice to see you, Todd, and you joined right when we needed you. For those of you, Todd Hansen is, as I said, president of Catalyst Performance Group. They are a leader in the implementation. He's actually been involved with implementing many engagement processes over the years, but his company specifically now focuses on business operating systems and on return on investment measurement for people practices. So Todd, maybe give us a little bit more detail of what you do for Rick's company in terms of measuring the effectiveness of his training.
Well, I've spent most of my career helping companies and their people succeed. And what I do with Rick has been so incredibly fulfilling, but also I think effective, is that Rick, his team, and the entire organization embraces this whole concept of continuous improvement. And there's no better way than to make changes to continue to improve your performance and make it fact-based. So yeah, for all the sales training programs, and it expands into leadership development and other things at Sunovion, we use the ROI methodology from ROI Institute, and we evaluate level 1, reaction satisfaction, level 2, learning and understanding, and sometimes level 3, impact. And so we gauge the results of whatever is taking place. Could be sales training, could be national meeting or a launch or something like that. And that gives us insight. Hey, how did we do? Let's celebrate all those wins. But most importantly, are there any gaps? Is there any immediate need that needs to be filled? And then also gives us an ability to create a roadmap, whether it's continuing throughout the year. What are we doing as it relates to a launch, or in something where there is a pulse to it, and we're going out another quarter to train a new group and onboarding reps. Like, how do we just make this even better? So yeah, it's just a thrill to be able to help a team of professionals that are committed to the success of the organization, but touching salespeople in particular with this case, that hey, we enable them to do that.
So Rick, how quickly, so Todd gets you a report. What do you do with that report after an event?
I get the raw data from the report, share it with my team. My team then evaluates, and they give direct feedback to our field-based trainers from that report to let them know how they did. They took 3 or 4 days out of their territory, flew to Massachusetts, gave their time to new hires. They really want the feedback. How did I do? So we give that to them immediately. We then get a more formal report. We review that and we'll schedule time. So it's typically within 5 or 6 weeks of that new hire training class that we'll sit down with Todd and we'll go through what worked well, where can we do better, and then what are the specific action steps that we need to take. And we actually had a very significant one that was a culmination of our last 3 or 4 training classes. We've done a bit of a reorganization, and we've got selling teams with multiple products to sell now. And in this age of virtual learning, hybrid learning, compressing time, we've shortened our training classes in headquarters. And what we found was through the surveys that our learners were not satisfied, our sales training managers were not satisfied, and our sales managers out in the field were a little bit less than satisfied, seeing some gaps. So in an era where the tide says less time live in headquarters training, more time virtual, or shorten it, get them out in the field and sell, we are expanding in July for the first time in years the amount of time that they'll spend at headquarters. So we're expanding by about 8 hours for 3 of our products, the time that they'll spend in here, which equates to about a day and a half extra in headquarters. But we and our senior leadership bought into this, feel that they're just not getting enough of the application, the role play, the practice selling time, and it shows when they get out in the field. So our senior leadership bought into the fact that the results are the results. We trust your judgment, and keep them for an extra day and a half to make them more complete and better when they get out in the field.
So finally, what kind of, I've seen the metrics, obviously, Todd, that you mentioned, and I'm not going to obviously ask you to disclose any specifics, but do you look at, how do you relate this to actual financial or business objectives? Are there any metrics that, I just saw Microsoft had an article in 2 executives there had an article in HBR, Harvard Business Review, on the fact that they measure whether employees are thriving. Isn't that great? But there was no discussion about what's the impact of the organization. Well, how does that affect a turnover, a willingness to recommend, productivity, quality? What does it matter if they're thriving, if the organization isn't benefiting, or otherwise they won't be thriving for long? So my question to you is, do you link your activities, other than you obviously getting compensated in sales results, and that's pretty powerful, are there any other indices that you use to look at the effectiveness against organizational purpose or other key goals?
Yeah, so I would say when your target is a sales force, we know, right? Intuitively, instinctively, and there's obviously lots of data. I mean, we need to properly equip salespeople. They need to have the knowledge, the information, the skills, which Rick and his team does incredibly well. So it goes from, head knowledge to actual skills that are demonstrated, right? And they gain confidence and the ability to carry messaging out. And they also need the contacts, especially now that they're back to face-to-face. People are making the appropriate contacts, not just among other field salespeople, but also really critical people that will help them drive results that are located in mid-level management or at corporate, things like that. So anyway, measuring the financial implication is not quite so critical because we know that that's going to drive results. But in other parts of Sunovion, where it's leadership development, a much more ambiguous tie to financial performance and business impact, we will measure beyond reaction to satisfaction, learning and understanding, and go to application. So what's actually being done with an entire course on leadership or executive presence and things like that, and what's changing in their workplace. And then we're asking them to monetize that, say, hey, what's the impact on the business? And in some cases, translate that to what's the monetary impact. Now, it's not a full-blown ROI study with where we're actually determining attribution, and it's not a CFO level report, but it provides really excellent insight in terms of, hey, are we actually moving the needle on the business in areas that we know matter when our target audience is leadership.
So just wrapping up, gentlemen, you've been very good with your time, generous with your time. Rick, I know this wouldn't be in Todd's area, but in terms of financial measures, it might not even be in your area, but I would imagine the company does look at things like turnover, sales turnover, willingness to, maybe even willingness to recommend. I don't know whether you have a referral app, an incentive program.
We do, yes.
Okay, because the best data to me is not whether an employee says she's willing to refer someone, is that she did. And I'm sure to get a good recruit at your company is worth a bundle of money, because of how the rarity of the skills that are required. So wrapping up, does the company have overall macro, like does it look at things like sales or human capital productivity? Looking at their, human capital value. Again, this might be out of your area of expertise, but, just interested in concluding with any broader metrics that the company might use.
Yeah, it's a little bit out of my area. I know HR does look at these things. We do monitor employee retention. We do monitor turnover of the sales force. And then on the analytics side, every territory is evaluated continuously as to a sales rep in or a sales rep out. What's the value of a territory and how productive are our sales reps? And that's really driven through sales and sales leadership as well, where sales representatives get the coaching that they need. If they're falling behind where they should be on their goals, then they get coaching and whatever training, if training is an issue on that. But that's looked at a little bit outside of the sales training.
Obviously. Well, thank you so much, Rick, for your time today. And Todd, I'm glad you were able to join us at the last minute. This, by the way, this really merited the case study here, Rick and Todd. This is really the type of thinking. And Todd, I'll give you the last, and I know this is a client, so you may not be 100% objective, but I do know that you're a pretty objective guy. How common do you think this type of discipline is in pharmaceuticals? Might be a different industry for all sorts of reasons, but you're in many different fields. How common is this kind of holistic strategic approach? Do you see it in sales management?
So there is a gradient, right, from doing nothing to at the upper echelon. I think Sunovion is in the top 5% as it relates to this really 360-degree approach to equipping, enabling, engaging, inspiring, their people with all the tools that Rick talked about. So I think many companies try, but it needs support from the top. And that's a critical element, is that organizations' upper level leadership actually believe that investment in their people is not only the right thing to do, it's a good thing to do, but it's also beneficial to the business. And then when they're evaluating things like Rick's programs, there's incredible affirmation that, look, this is accomplishing what we want to accomplish. And that's where measurement kind of fits in, is it's no longer just, hey, we heard from a few people that was really great. you can actually validate that. So it's allows you to perpetuate and increase the investment in people.
And Rick, I guess you're going to get the last word because this made me think of something.
Yeah.
Sunovion, if I recall, also has a reputation of being a disciplined financial business. They don't fool around. They're in business to make money. So in other words, it sounds to me that they've determined that there's an ROI in this or they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, whether it's stated on a spreadsheet or it's implied, when I go to senior leadership and say, I'd like to expand my headquarters training for this purpose, we're not being as effective as we can. And I'm suggesting that whether it's airfare, meals, travel, hotels, and in the time out of territory, all of that is worth it to give us a couple more days with these people, and they buy into it. So the company absolutely puts its money where its mouth is in knowing and understanding what we need to do to get our new hires or existing employees trained the right way.
And that includes these recognition and incentive programs. I understand your top salespeople can achieve really wondrous travel experiences. This company would not do that without an ROI, as far as I know.
Yeah, it's there's a great trip every year for our top performers, and it's a very motivating thing for them to try to do a great job during the year and be rewarded for it at the end of the year. So as I mentioned in our previous discussion, there are smaller rewards along the way. That we've got these little point systems. There are pats on the back along the way. There's quarterly bonuses, but at the end of the year, there's a real recognition, and for a lot of people, even more than a trip with peers who are really achieve highly, it's the recognition that you're in the President's Club. That's a big deal for people. It's a level of excellence that's very difficult to achieve in our industry.
Well, great to hear from a great company. Rick, once again, thanks for your time. Todd, thank you very much. And Todd, remember, we have you slated for an ROI session. We're using you a little bit more than we usually do, but your expertise happens to be in the area where business is moving, measurement and more effective management. Thank you so much, folks. Hung on, because we're going to continue for another 20 minutes with a quick overview of effective program design. Thanks again, gentlemen, and have a great afternoon.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
So as we continue on, as I explained, the rest of this session is going to be focused more specifically on the essence of effective program design and implementation. The whole concept of enterprise engagement is that it is strategic and systematic, just like we heard from Rick and Todd. There's a purpose, there's a vision, there are values, there are goals, and then there are clear tactics that align with them, that are measured and then implemented, I should say, and measured and monitored and then assessed and continuously improved. Continuous improvement is the essence of improvement in manufacturing, and it's the essence of improvement in people management. So I'm going to quickly go through two concepts, and we really did get a great example from Rick, but the success in any type of people implementation process, whether it's training, communications, learning, incentives, is be strategic and address the whole person. Look at what their company does. They don't just look at training. They look at all the different elements that go into addressing the whole person. Identify your audience. Make sure you understand them. What is their culture? What are their values? Who are you working with? And then connect everyone digitally if you can. Notice that Rick's company has a digital platform that any size company today can afford that. Set realistic goals based on history. Don't wish, dream forecast. You really have to look at what's been done. Can it be done? And involve your stakeholders in developing that. Get their input, their feedback. Develop qualitative and quantitative measures, as you saw in the Sunovion program. And if you can, assign a dollar value to desired goals and behavior. What's it worth to you to give somebody something? If it's really important for somebody to fulfill your values, Rick gave us a great example again at Sunovion, alignment. Somebody demonstrates alignment. That's what's it worth to you to do that. And if possible, as you heard there from Rick, integrate assessment, training, communications, rewards on a single platform or in a single, if you can't do it technologically, on a single strategy. And look what they've learned. Technology can only take you so far in training. You've really got to get people together oftentimes. And when you're getting them together, it's not for panel discussions, or it's not to be lectured to, it's to role play, it's to act out, it's to do things together collaboratively that you cannot do in a panel discussion. I am going to be very true to the time, even though this is a recorded session. We really do want to make these training programs for the EEA, time efficient. But I'm just going to give you a couple of examples. There's two ways to look at, enterprise engagement. There's and oftentimes when you hear about this new field of stakeholder capitalism, stakeholder management, it's in this very theoretical realm, very ivory tower. And whereas the Enterprise Engagement Alliance training program, as you just saw from the Sunovion case study, is we're really focusing on implementation. How do you make this happen? So you can read the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, to hear people debate false definitions of stakeholder capitalism. There's a fun debate going on about that, but it's only a way to enhance results for investors and businesses by creating value for customers, employees, supply chain partners, communities, and the environment. So anyway, Best Buy is a great example of a strategic situation. Hubert Joly had been an executive at a company called Carlson Marketing Group, which ironically was one of the first engagement companies. So based in Minneapolis, I guess Best Buy, also based in Minneapolis, found him to help them really survive, because Amazon was about ready to put them out of business. And he came in with a simple strategic concept, the Renew Blue Plan. It was developing a new brand proposition to enrich people's lives through technology, promoted through a 5-year campaign. Yes, it takes time. That integrated branding, culture, training, internal communications, and rewards. He helped break down the silos to align this, and he funded it by cutting staff. And when I mean staff, corporate staff, people that weren't hands-on, salaries of these people were cut, corporate jets were cut, and he invested in employee pay and training. What he realized was that the one thing Amazon could not compete on was the ability to have stores everywhere, and of course warehouses right near where the people live. So he really focused on product knowledge, customer experience, and store performance. And because he applied a strategic and systematic approach, aligning all of the stakeholders toward these key values, his company achieved within 6 years of that, $285 million in annualized cost reductions, gross profit optimization for a total of $1.6 billion since the program was launched, in 2013. And the company's operating income rose from about $1.3 billion to $1.9 billion. And the employee engagement results and turnover numbers significantly improved. Now, when we come to giving an example, by the way, Hubert Joly went on to write a book. He's left. He's been replaced by a new CEO, but he's now making the speaking circuit, promoting. I don't think he actually uses the term, but he is indeed a stakeholder capitalist, and he's out there promoting his book and his approach. So I'm using now, to kind of wrap up here, a really granular approach of a media company sales program. And I actually kind of had to invent this program based on a company that I worked for, or was an executive at, to give you an example of the fact that most companies do not do these programs properly. Sales executives often want a very quick fix, do this, get that. Hey, boys, girls, get this sales stuff. Everyone goes on a trip, get here, we get this. Well, you know what? People are more complex than that. And we saw that at Sunovion. And, I was interested that Sunovion starts with the customer, because if you create an incentive program that just gets people to badger the customer, and we all know companies that do that, right? You're going to hear from that, well, I won't name names, but there's certain companies that toward the end of the quarter, you're going to get a lot of phone calls from them because the salespeople have to hit their quarterly numbers, and they'll do anything. They'll make all sorts of offers to you and whatnot. That's not about building relationships. That's not enterprise engagement. And that model works. You burn people out, you churn and burn, but You can make money doing that. But anyway, so here's an example of sort of an ideal program of a $10 million company, which is the average. There are 219,000 companies in the United States, roughly, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that do sales over $10 million. Okay, so here's and this is a company with gross profit margins before all of their fixed costs of 50%. And the composition of the sales force, it's 10 college-educated professionals in their 20s to their 60s. They're a mix of genders and ethnicities. They're generally competitive and goal-oriented people, as salespeople are. Notice I'm mentioning an example of 10 people. I really want this type of scientific approach is easy to do if you know what you're doing, and very effective. So if they can get their sales up by 10%, that is $1 million in sales. And that's $500,000 potentially to the bottom line, because their gross margins are 50, meaning that if they've covered their fixed costs, then most of that additional money, gross profit, goes to the bottom line. So incremental sales generally are much more profitable than just hitting your own numbers. So in sales, in media sales, what are the required behaviors? Well, there's a direct correlation between presentations and numbers of sales, generally speaking. So if you're making quality presentations to the right people and you've got the right sales skills, you're going to have a higher close ratio. And that obviously is going to be a key. Companies, what they found, this company, was that product knowledge is what made them more effective. That just as Rick found at Sunovion, that if the salespeople really had a solid market knowledge and could really do a proper discovery call and ask the right questions of the clients, they could find information that would help them identify ways that their media company could help the clients. So they decided to invest in training, and they decided to reward the employees for participating in it, because they could identify at least a value to the organization of $1,000, let's say, because better training people would have better sales ratios. So basically, to establish their program, each salesperson develops his or her own plan to increase sales by 5 to 15% based on their experience, past performance, and they can earn points by achieving sales over that quota, that are rated about 10% of those incremental profits. And each salesperson receives these points by successfully completing the training programs and improving their sales ratios and their sales. And the idea is to track, how did they do on their training? How did they do on their sales presentations and their sales close ratios? And how did that relate to sales, so that you can see whether there are any correlations. And then the communication is critical. So the company has an employee engagement application, and it uses it to push out very quick little communication reminders, short case studies of successful salespeople, quick little mood test assessment, quick little games on product knowledge that they can earn extra points on, like the Wordle kind of thing, very quick, easy little games that they can play while waiting at the train or on the subway or waiting in the line at the grocery store. And then again, training determined by what is needed to achieve the goals. Right? Is it sales training and teaching discovery processes? Is it writing skills? Is it product knowledge? And then is the training delivered the way that's most effective? And you can only do that by evaluating. And notice that Sunovion learned that they do need to bring people in for role playing. They need to bring people in for anything that is, that assesses, ability to think on the spot, act quickly, and apply knowledge. Measurement. So they were able to use their CRM system to easily track sales. They were easily able to track number of presentations, and therefore they could track the success ratios of those. And in fact, their employee engagement app is able to track all of the communications, the participation in the games, their employee engagement scores, any peer-to-peer recognition, rewarding people for performance and for living the values, as Rick explained in that Sunovion program. Willingness to recommend as measured by do they recommend, a referral program, or participation in CSR, whichever it is the companies are seeking to recommend or to recognize. And the return on investment, you see, can be measured. You look at your base data, how many qualified presentations, did they improve their number of presentations? Okay, what is the value to the organization of higher presentations? This company said $200, because even if they didn't close a sale, it was yet another touch point that for the next year might have value. Sometimes indeed, these are arbitrary decisions. But if you're willing to reward people for performance, then you've got to be able to put a value on what that performance is worth to the organization. And then you have to have metrics at the end of the day. Did we hit our goals? And did people do more of the things that we thought that if they did more of would help us hit our goals? So here we look at the participation in their monthly training programs and their results. We determined that it was, again, worth $200 for employees for participating in that. So there's the value to the organization. And then the ratio of presentations that result in sales, did it increase? Did the number of presentations increase? They could have tracked that as well. So the whole idea is to use data, is to develop a tool, and this is based on something called the Master Measurement Model. It's available from the Incentive Research Foundation and at theirf.org, along with a lot of other useful research, by the way. And this is a process for developing a program from beginning to end, with where you have base data, you assign a value to the data, to the performance that you're trying to promote. You identify the behaviors that can lead to achieving those goals, or the tools that you need to promote those behaviors, and put a value on them. So many companies don't do that. Put a value on the behavior that you're trying to promote. If you're willing to reward somebody for it, put a value to it. So in wrapping up, the most important thing about any type of effort to engage people, first off, whenever possible, have the CEO buy in. If the CEO buys in, as we heard from Rick, you're going to have a much better go at it. Secondly, be strategic and systematic. Don't throw bright, shiny objects. Chances are, in sales especially, you'll just get your salespeople to badger your customers. There's no measurement for that. You're not going to know how many people you pissed off. What are the dollar value of all those people that were annoyed by your salespeople banging on the person's email or phone or door, a week before the end of the quarter? And then look holistically at the audience and look at how your audience interacts with other people. If they're truck drivers, they interact with the dispatcher. They interact with the people on the loading docks. Look at how people's performance can be affected by other people in the whole work value chain. And then look at the holistically at assessment, communications, rewards and recognition. Integrate and align these. Do not let them get siloed. Make sure that everything is working toward the same purpose. If possible, take advantage of any one of about 24 enterprise engagement or employee engagement technologies out there, and look for ones that allow you to have one platform all of those tools, so that the data you get is actually correlating the activities, the results. And then, did people participate in this assessment? Did they provide feedback? Did they read your communications? Did they participate in the games? Did they pass the tests? Did they get recognition from their peers? Did they recognize their peers for values? Really look at the analytics. Is everybody participating equally? If you're able to put into your data the gender and the age and the ethnicity of people, it's very interesting to run reports and see, is everybody in our organization in all different regions all participating in the same way, or are there differences, and why are those occurring? If you take a strategic and systematic approach and you measure the results, you're now in the new era of stakeholder management, human capital management, and measurement, where you recognize that people truly are an asset and make a significant contribution to the bottom line. Well, thanks so much for your participation. And this is officially the final class in our 9-class program, but we're recording these over the summer, and due to speaking schedules, we've had to do the live sessions a little bit out of order. But thanks again for participating in this program, and welcome to a field that truly is and addresses the last bastion of value creation in business.